Hello students, today we are going to discuss on feminist theories, feminist criticism and what do we understand by feminism. Now feminism and feminist criticism. The women's movement of the 1960s was not, of course, the start of feminism. Rather, it was a renewal of an old tradition of thought and action already possessing its classic books which had diagnosed the problem of women's inequality in society. These books include Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Women, 1792 published, which discusses male writers like Milton, Pope and Rousseau. Olive Scribner's Women and Labor, 1911 published, Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own in 1929, which vividly portrays the unequal treatment given to women seeking education and alternatives to marriage and motherhood, and Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, 1949, which has an important section on the portrayal of women in the novels of D.H. Lawrence. Male contributions to these traditions of feminist writing include John Stuart Mill's The Subjection of Women in the year 1869 and The Origin of the Family in the year 1884 by Frederick Engels. The feminist literary criticism of today is the direct product of the women's movement of the 1960s. This movement was, in important ways, literary from the start in the sense that it realized the significance of the images of women promulgated by literature and saw it as vital to combat them and question their authority and their coherence. In this sense, the women's movement has always been crucially concerned with books and literature, so that feminist criticism should not be seen as an offshoot or a spin-off from feminism which is remote from the ultimate aims of the movement, but as one of the most practical ways of influencing everyday conduct and attitudes. The concern with conditioning and socialization underpins a crucial set of distinctions that between the terms feminist, female and feminine, as Toril Moy explains, the first is a political position, the second a matter of biology, and the third a set of culturally defined characteristics. Particularly in the distinction between the second and third of these lies much of the force of feminism that you can see in Moy's essay in The Feminist Reader. Other important ideas are explained in the appropriate part of the remainder of this section. The representation of women in literature, then, was felt to be one of the most important forms of socialization, since it provided the role models which indicated to women and men what constituted acceptable versions of the feminine and legitimate feminine goals and aspirations. Feminists pointed out, for example, that in 19th century fiction, very few women work for a living unless they are driven to it by dire necessity. Instead, the focus of interest is on the heroine's choice of marriage partner, which will decide her ultimate social position and exclusively determine her happiness and fulfillment in life or her lack of these. Thus, in feminist criticism in the 1970s, the major effort went into exposing what might be called the mechanisms of patriarchy, that is, the cultural mindset in men and women which perpetuated sexual inequality. Critical attention was given to books by male writers in which influential or typical images of women were constructed. Necessarily, the criticism which undertook this work was combative and polemical. Then, in the 1980s, in feminism as in other critical approaches, the mood changed. Firstly, feminist criticism became much more eclectic, meaning that it began to draw upon the findings and approaches of other kinds of criticism: Marxism, structuralism, linguistics, and so on. Secondly, it switched its focus from attacking male versions of the world to exploring the nature of the female world and outlook and reconstructing the lost or suppressed records of female experience. Thirdly, attention was switched to the need to construct a new canon of women's writing by rewriting the history of the novel and of poetry in such a way that neglected women writers were given new prominence. Feminist theory. Now, feminist theory is the extension of feminism into theoretical, fictional, or philosophical discourse. It aims to understand the nature of gender inequality. Feminist criticism is a form of literary criticism that is based on feminist theories. It is broadly explained as the politics of feminism and uses feminist principles to critique the male-dominated literature. Women have been ignored or mostly considered secondary in the literature for a long time. Feminists advocated social, political, economic, and intellectual equality for women and men. Feminism defines a political perspective. It is distinct from sex or gender. Feminism means very different things to different people. The feminist movement, we can rather say women's movement, refers to a series of political campaigns for reforms on issues such as reproductive rights, domestic violence, maternity leave, equal pay, women's suffrage, sexual harassment, and sexual violence. The goal of feminism is to challenge the systematic inequalities women face on a daily basis. Contrary to popular belief, feminism has nothing to do with belittling men. In fact, feminism does not support sexism against either gender. Feminism works towards equality, not female superiority. Feminists and scholars have divided the movement's history into three waves. The first wave refers mainly to women's suffrage movements of the 19th and early 20th centuries, mainly concerned with the women's right to vote. The second wave refers to the ideas and actions associated with the women's liberation movement beginning in the 1960s, which campaigned for legal and social rights for women. The third wave refers to a continuation of and a reaction to the perceived failures of second wave feminism beginning in the 1990s. First wave feminism refers to an extended period of feminist activities during the 19th century and early 20th century in the United Kingdom and United States. Originally, it focused on the promotion of equal contract and property rights for women and the opposition to chattel marriage and ownership of married women and their children by their husbands. However, by the end of the 19th century, activism focused primarily on gaining political power particularly the right of women's suffrage. The term first wave was coined retrospectively after the term second wave feminism began to be used to describe a newer feminist movement that focused as much on fighting social and cultural inequalities as political inequalities. Second wave feminism refers to the period of activity in the early 1960s and lasting through the late 1980s. Second wave feminism has continued to exist since that time and coexist with what is termed third wave feminism. The feminist activist and author Carol Hanisch coined the slogan, "The personal is political," which became synonymous with the second wave. Second wave feminists saw women's cultural and political inequalities as inextricably linked and encouraged women to understand aspects of their personal lives as deeply politicized and as reflecting sexist power structures. Third wave feminism began in the early 1990s, arising as a response to perceived failures of the second wave and also as a response to the backlash against initiatives and movements created by the second wave. Third wave feminism seeks to challenge or avoid what it deems the second wave's essentialist definitions of femininity, which, according to them, overemphasize the experiences of upper middle class white women. Third wave feminism also contains internal debates between different feminists such as the psychologist Carol Gilligan, who believes that there are important differences between the sexes, and those who believe that there are no inherent differences between the sexes and contend that gender roles are due to social conditioning. In the end, feminism allows for a number of different perspectives, and different perspectives are appropriate to different problems and different levels of analysis. You can also prepare some important questions on this topic. Example: what is the concept of feminism? What is the history of feminism? Also discuss feminist criticism and the role of theory. Elaborate the waves of feminism. Thank you.